Hi, and Kevin Wright here, and welcome back to another property finance tips video. So, what is this week's subject? We're going to be talking about how to fund flips. In other words, properties that you buy and then sell rather than buy and rent out. Okay, so yes, this week's subject, flipping properties. American term. Some people might prefer to use the British term, but okay, buy and sell. Typically, buy, refurb, and sell is the way to do it. Although do something to add value and sell. Often a refurb, but it doesn't have to be. You can find other ways to do it. Getting planning permission, for example, would be another one. Let's look at the different ways that you can fund flip projects, and also how you shouldn't be funding flip projects. We're going to look at doing it with cash, doing it with bridging finance, and what about doing it with some sort of mortgage as well. If you've got the cash to do a flip, it's always great to use cash. Why is that? Zero borrowing costs, of course. If you're not borrowing any money, you're not paying any interest. So it's a good use of your capital. Now, some people say, oh, yes, but I don't want to tie my capital up, because what happens if I get another great deal that comes up that I really want to get into? I'm going to have to let it go because my cash is all tied up. Not true, actually, not true. Because if you have a property with no mortgage on it, or any borrowing on it at all, even if you're part way through a refurb and it's not in a, shall we say, a saleable or rentable condition, it still has a value. And what you can actually do is we can get a bridging finance lender who would clearly and happily lend 75% of the current value of that property and put that towards the new property. So you could probably do a no cash down deal. So if you think that a bridger would lend you, let's say, 75% of the property you want to buy, so property A, property B is the one you've already got your cash in, you could actually, by getting 75% or up to 75% on each, you could actually fund 100% of the purchase price and probably the refurb cost too of the property B you want to buy. So never be afraid of tying up your cash in a property and think you're missing out, because you won't be. The next area is, okay, if you haven't got enough cash, and of course, it doesn't have to be your cash, it could be someone else's cash. You could borrow someone else's cash privately. No reason why you couldn't do that, as long as you can find someone with the confidence to lend to you. But if you can't do either of those sort of things, then bridging finance is the next thing to look at. Now, bridgers are very happy to lend on flip projects because they lend short term anyway. They're lending for months, not years anyway. You can be quite transparent. Hey, look, I want to buy this property. I'm going to do this to it. It's going to take a few months or a few weeks, whatever it is. And then I'm going to sell it at the back end. I'm going to put it on the market for sale, get a seller. They'll probably get their mortgage, or maybe I'll get lucky and find a cash buyer, and I'll pay you back as soon as I've sold it. Great. Very simple transaction. So bridging finance is used extensively when you haven't got cash. Now, what about a mortgage? Should you be using a mortgage for a flip? And the answer is a resolute no. And let me explain the reasons why that's the case. Mortgage lenders lend for the medium to long term, and that's a bit of an elastic time frame. But if you're going to be flipping, you're going to be turning around in almost all circumstances. You're going to be buying the property and then selling it again in under 12 months. Now, by no stretch of the imagination with any lender is less than 12 months medium to long term. It's short term. Here's the issue, that if you're transparent with a mortgage lender and you say, hey, can I have a mortgage? How long do you want it for? Well, probably 6 months, 9 months maybe. Now, if you put that on the application form, and there is a specific part of every mortgage lender's application form where you have to declare the number of years that you want the mortgage. If you put 6, 9, 12 months or anything like that on there, when the lender's underwriter assesses it, they will decline to lend because mortgage lenders do not do mortgages for those short periods of time. Do people do this? Well, yes, they do actually, because what they do is they lie. They pretend that they're going to keep the mortgage for 10 years, 15 years, 20, or even 25 years. So they get a mortgage. You could say, and it's not an stretch to say, they get a mortgage by deception. So they deceive the lender into believing that they're going to have a term that's in excess of what their real intent is. If they told the truth, they debt declined, so they deceive the lender by not telling the truth. You could say that is the thin end of the wedge in terms of mortgage fraud, because they're getting a mortgage by deception. This is very clear and cut and dried, really. You shouldn't be using a mortgage for any type of flip project. You may be thinking, yes, but we've seen these mortgages you can get with no early redemption penalty, no early redemption charge. So surely they must be set up, if they allow you to redeem the mortgage without any penalty, they must be set up for short-term lending. Actually, no, they're not either. And again, if you were transparent and you put on your mortgage application form that you want the mortgage for 12 months or less, even those no early repayment charge lenders would decline to lend, because mortgage lending is not short-term lending. That's not what those products were brought out for. That's not what those lenders had in mind. They had in mind people that don't want to commit to a fixed rate and be tied in. They want to have the flexibility to switch products. So and possibly switch lenders too, but not in a matter of months. They do expect you to do that typically within 2 to 5 years. That is the reality of the situation. So don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because they're just trying to shoehorn you into a mortgage that you shouldn't actually be getting. So really, the answer to this is, how should you fund a flip? Is that you could fund it with cash, yours or someone else's, or bridging finance. Now, of course, you could potentially use a mortgage if it's remortgaging a property that you already own and you want to invest in. The reason for taking the mortgage, you want to invest in another property. So there you're taking out a mortgage on a property you already own that you're not going to pay back within a few months. So that would be a legitimate way of doing it, whether that's a first or a second charge mortgage. So there we are. How to finance a flip and how not to finance a flip project is a subject for this week. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you next week.